I never expected to uncover the heartbreaking truth behind my restaurant's new waitress. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was just a typical Tuesday evening, the clinking of plates danced lightly in the air, and laughter spilled from every corner like a warm embrace. But then she walked in. Claire. She seemed to glide, her pale hair catching the glow of the pendant lights. Yet, there was something different about her, something profoundly unsettling. The first time I caught a glimpse of her eyes, it sent a shiver down my spine. They were a haunting shade of green, deeper than the forest after a storm. But it was the fragility beneath her bold demeanor that shook me to the core. She wore her apron with shaky hands, fingers trembling as she took orders. It was as if each request weighed a ton. I had a feeling I was meant to see her, but why? It wasn't just her beauty that drew me in, it was the quiet grief hidden behind her smile. I wanted to reach out, to pull her from the shadows lurking just behind her gaze. My best friend Annie, the one who always knew what to say, couldn't stop looking at Claire, too. "Something's off, don't you think?" she whispered, her brow furrowing. I nodded, the hairs on my arms standing up. Claire had a secret, I could feel it in my bones. Rumors began to swirl around the restaurant. Customers noticed how she never talked much. How her laughter felt strained. But even more peculiar? She never accepted tips, just brushed them aside like they were nothing. It didn't sit right with me. Why was a waitress, in a busy diner like ours, refusing something so simple? Late one night, while the diner was emptying out, I caught Claire outside, sitting on the curb with her head bent low. Tears glistened on her cheeks while she wiped her eyes with a flicker of fury. It tugged at me, sight of someone so broken near the flickering neon sign of my diner. A heartbeat rang in my ears. My own fear of stepping forward held me back. What if I was wrong? What if she didn't want to talk? "Are you okay?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The silence stretched painfully before she looked up, those green eyes filled with something sharp and fragile. "You'll be fine," she said, but I caught the hitch in her breath. There was a story behind that mask. A burden too heavy for anyone to shoulder alone, and then, the door swung open with a jarring thud as Annie emerged, her face twisted into a mix of confusion and concern. I realized at that moment I had to know. I had to understand who this mysterious waitress really was. Why she appeared in the world almost like a ghost, but just as I gathered the strength to approach, a crash of glass shattered the silence behind us. Startled, we turned to see a broken plate lie crumpled on the floor, the remnants of shattered hopes strewn about, just like the secrets Claire held. Annie gasped, her eyes wide with shock. I felt my pulse quickening. What if this was just the beginning? What if Claire's story was woven into something I couldn't foresee? As Claire left, her silhouette disappearing into the darkness, I felt a sudden surge of urgency. What if unraveling her heartache led to mine? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash the like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The next day at the diner was heavy with an unnerving anticipation. The door chimed its familiar welcome, but it felt different. With each new customer, I held my breath, half hoping, half fearing that Claire would walk through those doors again. I prepared myself for the inevitable confrontation, the moment I would finally glean the story that weighed on her like a storm cloud overhead. But as the morning shift progressed, it quickly became apparent that Claire wasn't coming back, not today, maybe not ever. Our regulars filled the seats, their chatter mingling with the sound of frying bacon and clinking cutlery, yet all I could hear was the deafening absence of her presence. An unsettling tension brewed within me, turning the coffee bitter on my tongue. "Where's Claire?" I finally asked Annie, unable to hold back the question any longer. The worry etched on her face mirrored my own thoughts. "I don't know." She didn't say anything about taking a day off. Each unanswered question fed the urgency that had taken root in my chest. What had happened to her between the sudden tears and the flicker of anger? A cascade of possibilities threatened to drown me. Could it be something about her past? An incident that left her too raw to share. After my shift ended, I stood outside, the night air cool against my skin. I could still see her there in the flickering light of the diner's sign. I could still remember how I had hesitated. This time, there would be no holding back. I would find her following a faint lead. I wandered into the heart of the city. The streets had taken on an unfamiliar character, glimmers of streetlights casting shadows, reminiscent of Claire's haunted eyes. I stepped into a nearby cafe where I overheard whispers of a waitress who came from a broken familia girl with a talent for serving comfort but who carried only sadness within her. My stomach tightened with a pang of guilt. If I hadn't noticed her sooner, maybe she wouldn't have felt so invisible, so alone. I glanced around the cafe, my gaze sweeping past patrons engaged in lively conversations, laughter, and the warmth of long conversations that filled empty spaces. The stark contrast of their joy against Claire's burden weighed down on my heart. Just as I was about to give up searching, a woman approached me. Her silver hair was neatly gathered in a bun, and a kind smile softened her face, giving her an air of wisdom and warmth. "Looking for someone?" she asked gently, sensing my anxiety. "Claire," I admitted with a tremor in my voice. "She worked at the diner. I think something's wrong." The woman raised an eyebrow, her expression shifting to one of concern. "You're not the first to come asking about her." "What do you mean?" My heart raced. She used to be so bright, full of dreams. "But life has a way of darkening even the sunniest souls," she said softly. She was trying to escape a past that won't let her go. Each word was like a blow, leaving me to wrestle with my own emotions, an uneasy mix of sympathy and urgency. "Where can I find her?" I pressed, suddenly desperate. "Last I heard, she was staying at the Montclair, an old motel on the outskirts of town." "I can't promise she'll want to see you." Before I could respond, she nodded toward a small table in the corner of the cafe, smiles breaking out amongst a group of friends celebrating a birthday while I stood frozen, clutching the weight of her words. In that moment, the din of laughter felt like a cruel joke. With a newfound sense of purpose, I rushed out, the chill of the night air biting at my cheeks as I hurried toward the Montclair. I had to find her. I had to reach through that veil of sadness that threatened to swallow her whole. Arriving at the motel, I spotted a flickering neon light that danced in the darkness, perhaps a reflection of Claire's own battle within. I paused at the entrance, my heart pounding as I knocked on her door, my breath caught between hope and dread. "Claire?" I called softly, my voice just above a whisper. Silence. I knocked again, my hands trembling, the night around me closing in. And then I heard it, the sound of footsteps, soft but determined, shuffling inside. The door creaked open, and my breath hitched. Claire stood there, looking like a lost child, her pale hair unkempt and shadows pooling under her eyes. She pulled her lips into a weak smile, but it felt miles away from the person I had seen before. As we stood facing each other, the weight of everything unspoken loomed large. "What are you doing here?" she asked, but before I could answer, she glanced behind me, her eyes widening in a mix of fear and recognition. I need to talk to you," I said, feeling the edge of panic rising, but before I could say another word, she glanced at something over my shoulder and froze. "No, not now," she whispered, her breath trembling. I turned my head just in time to see the dark figure approaching from the shadows, a silhouette that promised nothing good. The fragile remnants of hope I had built along my journey shattered within an instant, replaced by an anxiety so thick, I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Claire, who is that?" I demanded, but she shook her head, terror etched in her features. "Please, you need to leave," she pleaded, urgency pouring from every word. Just as the chilling reality began to seep under my skin, the door swung closed between us, sealing her within that room, and just like that, the connection we had built was severed. I stood there, paralyzed by the unwelcome truth. Claire was still caught in a darkness far deeper than I had imagined. And now, whatever mystery surrounded her seemed to threaten not just her, but me as well. The air hung thick with unresolved tension, swirling around me as I stood outside the closed door of Claire's room. My heart raced, pumping adrenaline through my veins, urging me to act. I had just crossed a threshold into a world far more complicated than I could have imagined. "Claire!" I yelled, desperation fueling my voice. "Please, just tell me what's happening." The only response was stillness, a suffocating quiet that spoke volumes. For a moment, I wondered if I should just leave, give her space. But how could I abandon her in the face of whatever danger lurked nearby? My thoughts raced back to Annie's worried expression at the diner, echoing how our entire community seemed to hold their breath, waiting for something to give. I knocked on the door again, my knuckles white with tension. "I'm not going anywhere until you talk to me." A shuffling sound came from inside, the unmistakable weight of someone pacing. "Claire, please," I said again, trying to soften my voice. "I'm here for you then." Just as the darkness behind me felt almost palpable, the door cracked open. Claire's face emerged, fear gripping her features. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, her voice shaky. "Who's out there?" I pressed, glancing nervously over my shoulder towards the shadowy figure that stood just a few feet away. The silhouette seemed to loom larger, darker somehow, as if it was drawing strength from the very space around us. "Just go," she urged, panic rising like a tide in her eyes. No. I stepped forward, unwilling to retreat. "Not without you. If there's danger, we face it together." A flicker of conflict crossed her face, a battle between fear and the flickering light of hope sparking within me. Just as it seemed she might relent, a voice called out from the shadows, smooth but edged with an authority that sent chills coursing through my spine. "Claire, don't make this harder than it needs to be." I turned to the voice, and the figure stepped into the light. A man in a dark coat, his expression unreadable, yet his very presence radiated a menacing intensity. "Who are you?" I demanded, instinctively positioning myself in front of Clary, a futile, yet instinctive act of protection. "Let her go, kid," he scoffed, his gaze steady. "She doesn't belong in this little game you're playing." "Game?" My mind raced with questions, my heart pounding louder than ever. "What do you want with her?" "She's involved with matters far beyond your understanding," the man said, his voice both soothing and sinister. "Just back off, and maybe you won't get hurt. No. Claire's voice broke out, sharp and filled with something that felt like defiance. "I'm not going with you." "Like you have a choice," he countered, his smile cold and predatory. The situation was spiraling out of control. I felt utterly helpless, grasping for words that might diffuse the tension but finding none. "Please." Claire reached for me, her fingers brushing against my arm. The connection was electric, but I could see the fear pooling in her eyes, urging me to think quickly. "Claire, you don't have to go with him," I said, my resolve conflicting with the dread settling into my stomach. "We can figure this out together." The man laughed at an ominous sound that struck at the very core of my resolve. "There's no figuring this out, sweetheart," he said mockingly, directing his words at Claire. "You know what happens if you try to play both sides." Shivers coursed through me, the realization dawning that Claire was somehow caught in a dangerous web I had only begun to untangle. I opened my mouth to demand more answers, to challenge this terrifying figure, but Claire shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "We can't," she choked out. "It's too late." The weight of her words crushed the air from my lungs. It felt as though the ground beneath me had shifted, plunging me into a reality I had not anticipated. Suddenly, the door fully swung open, and Claire stepped forward, breaking the fragile boundary that separated me from the darkness. "I'll go with you," she said, her voice steadying even as her body trembled. Panic ignited within me. "No, Claire. Don't. Please." I reached for her, but the man grabbed her arm firmly. She turned to me, her expression resolute yet filled with sorrow. "I don't want you to get hurt," she whispered, the unshed tears spilling down her cheeks. "It's too late for that," I replied, fighting back my own emotional tide, pleading both with her and myself to find a way through this storm. As the man began to lead Claire away, she glanced back one last time, her eyes locked with mine. In that fleeting moment, I caught a glimpse of the girl she used to be, one who joked about pancakes and shared dreams amidst the morning rush, now trapped within shadows that seemed to swallow her whole. "Don't follow us," the man warned, tightening his grip around Claire, who stood frozen, torn between choices she shouldn't have had to face. A deep pit of dread settled in my stomach as they turned a corner, disappearing into the darkness, and the last vestiges of hope slipped through my fingers. I was about to lose her, possibly forever, tangled in a world I didn't understand. I took a trembling step back, heart shattered, struggling to breathe as realization struck. It wasn't just Claire's burden I had stumbled upon. I had unwittingly crossed into a realm where secrets intertwined with danger, and where the consequences loomed larger than either of us imagined. The haunting sounds of their departure echoed in my mind, wrapping me in despair, and as I turned to leave, resolve clawing my soul, knew I had to delve deeper. If I wanted to save Claire, I would have to confront the very darkness that now threatened to consume her, even if it meant confronting my own shadows along the way. The hours bled together as I paced the streets, each footfall heavy with uncertainty. The world seemed muted, a gray canvas waiting for color that didn't exist. I couldn't shake the image of Claire's face from my mind, a mixture of fear and resignation, the very essence of a battle lost. It clotted my insides, a pain that had taken root in my chest and wove its tendrils around my heart, squeezing tighter with every passing moment. Where could they have taken her? My mind tumbled through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. This was not just about Claire, it was about the web of deceit I had stumbled into, one that pulled at threads woven into the very fabric of the community I had always thought I knew. Returning to the diner felt like wading through molasses. The familiarity of the surroundings was tainted with the knowledge of Claire's captured spirit, and the warmth of the place now seemed cold and hollow. I could hear the hum of conversation, the clatter of dishes, and laughter that felt far too light amid the weight of my turmoil. Annie, the waitress with a heart of gold, noticed my distress immediately. "Hey, what's wrong?" She approached me, concern etched on her forehead. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I looked at her for a long moment, the words aching to escape but tangled in a web of emotion. Instead of burdening her with the truth, I forced out a smile. "Just a rough day." My voice faltered. "I'm worried about Claire." Annie's brow furrowed as she leaned in closer. "I've noticed she's been a bit off lately." "You think something's wrong?" I nodded, the weight of my assuredness pressing down on me. "Yeah. She didn't tell me everything, but it feels serious." Annie's eyes darkened with concern. "If something's bothering her, she'll need us to support her." "I don't think she would want to go through this alone." Hope sprung faintly within me, igniting a small flame. Perhaps I wasn't entirely alone in this struggle. "Do you think you can help me figure out what's going on?" "Of course. Let's do some digging," she said with fierce determination. "But first, let's serve the customers." "We'll take a break and chat afterward." I nodded, grateful for her kindness. The shift passed in a blur, and as we prepared to close down the diner, I stole furtive glances at Annie, her ease and dedication grounding me amidst the chaos of my thoughts. Together, we moved toward the back, away from the watchful eye of our patrons. Once the last customer filtered out and the neon lights dimmed, I turned to Annie, urgency surging. "What do we do? Do you have any contacts in town who might know something?" Annie considered it for a moment, her face thoughtful. "There's Mark, the guy who runs the auto shop. He's been around for ages and knows everyone's business. If something's happening, you can bet he's in on it." A flicker of hope ignited in my chest. "Do you think he'll talk to us?" "You'd be surprised what people share over a cup of coffee," Annie replied, determination lacing her voice. She grabbed her jacket and motioned for me to follow her out. The brisk night air hit my face as we made our way to the auto shop, the cold biting at my skin but failing to numb the growing anxiety within me. I racked my brain for any clue, an overheard conversation, an odd glance, any indication that I could catch a break in this twisted mess. The auto shop was dimly lit, the sign buzzing softly above the door. Annie rapped her knuckles against the glass door, and within moments, Mark appeared, his expression morphing from surprise to cautious welcome. "What's up?" he asked, glancing between the two of us. "We need to talk," I began, the urgency in my voice unmistakable. "It's about Claire." At the mention of her name, I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes, followed by a subtle shift in demeanor. "Come in," he said, the door creaking as he swung it open. We stepped inside, and he led us to a small back room cluttered with tools and old car parts. "What's going on?" Mark leaned against the workbench, crossing his arms. His casual posture belied the palpable tension in the air. I took a deep breath. "Claire's in trouble. And I don't know how deep it goes. I need to know if you've heard anything at all." Mark hesitated, searching my face as if weighing how much to reveal. "Anyone looking for her? Anyone unusual hanging around?" As I explained what I had witnessed, his expression shifted, the muscles in his jaw tightening. "You don't know what you're getting into." "What do you mean?" I pressed, my heart racing. "The man you described, he's bad news. Involved with things that run deeper than this town. Dangerous connections." If Claire is in the thick of it. Suddenly, the door swung open, and another figure stepped in. A startling presence filled with a blend of confidence and audacity. It was Claire's sister, Sarah, someone I hadn't seen in ages. My breath caught in my throat as her eyes locked with mine, a vivid storm of emotions rushing through her gaze. "Where is she?" Sarah demanded, her voice low but filled with urgency. I want to know where my sister is. My mind reeled. Sarah was not supposed to be here. 2. Don't know. She was taken by someone in a dark coat. Sarah's face hardened. I should have seen it coming, she whispered, almost to herself, but her gaze bore into me like a knife. You don't understand the game they're playing. Then help us, Annie said, stepping forward. We need answers. We need a plan. As the 2 women stood there, the air thick with tension and an overwhelming sense of impending dread, I felt the weight of my own heartbreak compounding. Claire might not only be in danger across town, perhaps she was already entangled in something larger than any of us could comprehend. And with Sarah's arrival, I realized the situation was far more complicated than I ever could have imagined. The flickering shadows in the corner of the room taunted me, reminding me of Claire's last terrified glance, a final plea wrapped tightly in uncertainty. My heart raced, and as those emotions boiled over within me, I couldn't shake the thought that time was slipping through our fingers like grains of sand, and each moment spent being idle could cost Claire everything. Then Sarah stepped forward, her expression suddenly illuminated with fierce determination. All right, then. We're going after her, but we need to move. There's no time to waste. And just like that, the air shifted again. This battle wasn't just mine anymore. But as we all exchanged determined glances, I couldn't shake the feeling of something lurking beneath the surface. What we were about to uncover might shatter everything we thought we knew. The weight of the moment swelled in the cramped room, and as Sarah's declaration hung in the air, my heart pounded with an unsettling mix of resolve and dread. In the dim light, the shadows danced menacingly around us, echoing the doubts that clawed at my insides. What if our chase for answers only led us deeper into danger? Mark stepped closer, his brow furrowed. Moving too quickly might put you all at risk. We need a plan, not just urgency. He glanced at Sarah, the tension between them palpable, like a crackling electric current, and that tension struck an odd chord within me. What do you know about this? Why is her sister here now? Sarah's eyes flickered with something indefinable, a mix of anger and fear. I've been gathering information, watching the patterns. Claire has been involved with some dangerous people, ones who won't just let her walk away. This isn't just about her, it's about a deal gone wrong. Confusion churned in my chest. A deal? What kind of deal? Before she could reply, Mark's phone buzzed loudly on the workbench, shattering our tense silence. He grabbed it and glanced at the screen, his face paler than before. It's about Claire, he said, the calm tone in his voice contrasting starkly with the anxiety I felt gripping my heart like a vice. It's not just rumors anymore. Someone just shared a location. What? Where? My fingers curled tightly at my sides, the fierce urgency pressing me forward like an unseen force, somewhere outside of town. An old warehouse. It's notorious for illegal trades, drugs, people. Everything that keeps people like Claire ensnared in this world. Annie's face turned bleak as the implications sank in. If she's there, we have to go. Yes, but Mark hesitated, running a hand through his hair in frustration. We can't just storm in there. If Claire's entwined with these people, doing something rash could make things worse. We could lose her for good. Every fiber of my being screamed to act, clashing openly with the growing doubt within. As Mark spoke, realities I had tried to ignore flooded my vision, waves of innocent eyes trapped in desperation, shackles of deceit heavy around their necks. I glanced at Sarah, who looked just as torn. Her protective instinct flared beneath the surface, and I could sense her internal battle reflecting my own. Then we find someone who can help us. Sarah's voice cut through the fog, fierce and commanding. I have contacts who know the routes into the warehouse. If we can navigate the landscape correctly, we can get her out without them ever knowing we were there. Mark opened his mouth to protest, but I intercepted him. No, it's too dangerous. What if your contacts end up being the kind of people we're trying to infiltrate? The fear laced my voice, but I knew I had to voice my concerns. If they find out we're looking for Claire, it won't just mean losing her. It could mean our lives too. But just as doubt threatened to settle in again, Sarah stepped closer, her eyes blazing with determination. Do you remember what Claire always said? She said that sometimes, the scariest thing you can do is the exact thing you're afraid of. We owe it to her to try. The force of her conviction ignited something within me, pushing away the inertia that had entrenched my heart. Perhaps it was the rawness of our shared fear or the unshed tears we all held in our eyes, but it was contagious. I gave a slow nod, my decision uneasy but resolute. "All right," I said, drawing a slow, steady breath to fortify my resolve. "Let's do this. But we have to go now. Before it's too late." As we gathered our things, adrenaline flowed through me in a heady rush. With each step toward the door, my mind flashed back to Claire's face. I remembered the small wrinkles that formed near her eyes when she smiled, the warmth and light that radiated from her presence. I couldn't let that be starved out, not by the likes of those who had woven insidious webs around her spirit, but just as we stepped outside, a distant siren wailed, slicing through the night and sending a shiver down my spine. The sound seemed to echo ominously, underscoring my trepidation. As I took in the darkened streets, shadows obscuring our path, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that time was not on our side. "Wait," Mark said suddenly, his voice rising above the chilly air. "I just had a thought. Before we go, we might want to grab supplies or weapons. You never know what we're walking into." As I hesitated, the fear of the unknown clawing at my throat, Sarah steelily nodded. "Then let's make it quick. We don't have much time." And just then, the sharp sound of a gunshot resonated in the distance, deep and shattering, reverberating through the night like a cruel omen. My heart dropped, a cold shiver lacing through my spine. "That sounded too close," I whispered, dread pooling in my stomach. "Get down," Mark shouted as he ducked behind a nearby car, the urgency in his voice sending us scrambling for cover. My mind raced, desperate for a plan, any plan, but all I could think about was Claire and how we might have just become embroiled in something we weren't prepared for. "Are you okay?" Annie hissed, looking at me with wide eyes filled with fear. "That gunshot, what if it's them?" I stuttered, panic rising as I pressed further down, the unforgiving metal of the car digging into my ribs. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows across the street, silhouetted by the moonlight's glow. I squinted, dread lacing through me as recognition slammed into me. It was someone I recognized, someone who had once shared friendly faces over dinner, now enveloped in danger and secrets that could undo everything. As the figure stepped forward, illuminated by a nearby street lamp, I gasped as realization gripped me. It was the man from Claire's past, the one who might be the thread tying all our fates together in a collision course of heartbreak, deceit, and desperation. As we all looked on, my heart thudded with the realization that the dark truth was finally closing in on us. The weight of the night bore down on us as the figure emerged, each step echoing like a drumbeat of impending doom. Claire's past and the ghosts that followed had come to haunt us under the unforgiving glow of streetlights. "David?" Mark whispered, disbelief flooding his voice. The man stood there, hands resting casually in the pockets of his worn leather jacket, his face a mixture of defiance and fear. "What are you doing here? Nice to see you too, Mark." David's tone was sardonic, cutting through the tension. "I could ask the same of you." "What's this?" A rescue mission for Claire. Panic surged in my chest as I catalogued the clues, the familiarity of his presence, the stories that had wrapped around Claire like poison ivy. I had never thought he would reappear at a moment like this. "You know where she is, don't you?" I didn't mean for the question to come out as a plea, but it felt like the only lifeline in a sea of despair. David's shoulders tightened. "Maybe, maybe not. But if you're here to take on those people, you're making a huge mistake." The warning hung in the air, thick and tense, a foreboding reminder of the danger awaiting us. "We're not afraid of danger," I replied, forcing courage into my words, though every nerve in my body screamed otherwise. "Not afraid, or just plain reckless?" David's voice turned serious, an edge of concern breaking through his bravado. "Listen, Claire thought she could handle it. She thought she could walk away. But those people don't let go that easily. It's not just about her anymore, it's about everyone they've touched. And they're not the kind to show mercy. What do you know?" Sarah stepped from behind me, her voice firm but laced with a vulnerable hope. "If you're here, you must have some way to help her. Tell us." David eyed us, weighing the desperation on our faces against his own well of regrets. "That place you're looking for? It's a war zone. You don't just grab her and walk out." He paused, as if the weight of the decision pressed on him, driving him deeper into the shadows. "But if you want in, there's something you'll have to do for me first." A silence fell, every word laced with unspoken compromises. "What is it?" Mark demanded, his irritation coiling tightly, ready to snap. "I need you to help me clear my name," David replied, bravely, but I noticed the flicker of uncertainty in his gaze. I was set up to take the fall for a deal gone sour, one that might be related to Claire's situation. If we sort that out, I can help you. The audacity of his proposition stunned me. David had drawn us into his mess even as we fought for Claire. But the thought of aligning with him, with someone drowning in a quagmire of trouble, made my heart race uncomfortably. Yet amidst the swirl of conviction and doubt, a part of me knew that if he was telling the truth, we could uncover a pathway to her. How do we know you're not lying? Sarah's voice was stronger than mine, reflecting both caution and a desperate hope. How can we trust you? A cold smile crept across David's face, one that whispered of the twists and turns that shared history wove into his reality. You don't. But hey, race the kicker, you don't have any other options, do you? His words cut deep, leaving the stark truth hanging over us like a storm cloud. I felt tears pricking at the corners of my eyes as the weight of our unsustainable situation pressed heavily upon my chest. And if we decline? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What happens then? Then you go in blind, David answered, the gravity in his expression stealing my breath. And I don't have a way to shield you from the chaos. Claire's not going to be saved by blind action. The longing to save Claire and the paralyzing fear of uncertainty knotted in my stomach. As I stood at the crossroads of action and inaction, my thoughts whirled like a storm of desperation. Mark shifted, his frustration visible in the tightness of his posture. Fine. Well, help you. But your plan better be solid. We need backup getting through this. David nodded, a flicker of determination igniting in his eyes. Meet me at the old diner in an hour. I'll have the details. As he faded back into the shadows, the sirens wailed again, a chilling reminder of the stakes at play. We were one step closer, and yet further than ever from the safety we craved. Are we seriously considering this? Annie mumbled, her gaze reflecting a mixture of skepticism and fear. I nodded, the cold reality settling around us like a heavy shroud. We have to take the risk. It's the only chance. We have to find her. Mark clenched his fists, setting his jaw. But this means more danger, doesn't it? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed, vibrating insistently in my pocket. I fished it out, my heart racing as I read the message. I know you're looking for Claire. You're running out of time. I exchanged a glance with Sarah, the urgency palpable, a knot of anxiety balling in my throat. Who sent this? I pressed, but my fingers trembled as I slipped my phone back into my pocket, dread encircling my heart. Let's go, I said, casting one last glance into the darkness. Clarity washed over me, mingled equally with growing fear. We were on the brink of entangling threads that tied our fates together in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. This chase was no longer just about Claire, it was a descent into tangled emotions and the haunting shadows of decisions already made. The landscape of our lives was shifting, pulling us toward an unavoidable confrontation. As we hurried back down the street, I felt the looming presence of unknown dangers lurking behind us. The truth hung heavy in the air, a heartbreaking melody resonating through every unsettling moment. The darker our path became, the more entwined we were becoming with Claire's story, longing for a resolution that felt more distant with every heartbeat. The diner loomed ahead, a weathered beacon amid the night's shroud. Flickering lights buzzed overhead, casting eerie shadows reminiscent of the turmoil within. I paced outside, half dreading what lay ahead but unable to turn back. My heartbeat thrummed in time with my anxiety, a pulse of dread and determination intertwined. Mark and Sarah approached, their footsteps crunching against the gravel. Mark's expression was fierce and protective, while Sarah's eyes shimmered with uncertainty. What if this is a trap? She murmured, her voice barely a whisper carried away by the evening breeze. Then we'll deal with that when the time comes, I replied, forcing strength into my tone. Right now, we have to focus on Claire. Annie soon joined us, her face pale but resolute. We can't let fear paralyze us. If there's even the slightest chance David knows where she is, we owe it to Claire to find out. I nodded, grateful for her courage. It was that flicker of hope that propelled me forward, as unsteady as it felt. We stepped through the entrance, the bell above the door ringing out like a warning chime, each tone resonating deep within me as if it echoed my thoughts. Inside, the air was thick with the aroma of burned coffee and greasy fries. David sat in a secluded booth in the back, his posture casual but his gaze alert, like a wolf that had returned to the pack. He gestured for us to approach, the flickering fluorescent lights illuminating the tension etched across his features. I am glad you made it, David said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty hanging between us. I didn't think you'd actually show up. We didn't come here to socialize, David, Mark interjected sharply, his arms crossed defensively. Let's cut to the chase. What do we need to do? David leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. To clear my name, we need to find the person who framed me. He goes by the name of Caleb. He's tied into everything, Claire, the deal gone wrong, all of it. If we can get him to talk, we might just uncover who really has her. Anxiety coiled tighter in my stomach at the mention of Caleb. And where do we find him? I asked, grasping at some semblance of control amidst the turmoil. David hesitated, his fingers drumming on the table, a flicker of fear crossing his face. He's living off the grid now. Last I knew, he was hiding in a warehouse on the outskirts of town. But getting to him won't be easy. He's not just a dealer, he's dangerous, like we'll end up missing too dangerous? Annie asked, biting her lip as trepidation painted her features. Exactly, David replied, the weight of his words sinking into my chest like a stone. But if we can find him, we can turn the tables. My mind raced, visions of Claire flashing through my thoughts. I couldn't afford to lose her. Anyone could see that. What do you want us to do? I managed, my voice trembling slightly despite my attempts at composure. There's a guard at the warehouse, someone who might know Caleb's whereabouts, he said. We can create a diversion while one of you finds out what you can. It's risky, but it might be our best shot. I glanced at Mark and Sarah, their identities morphing into powerful reminders of what was at stake. We can't fail, I said, the fervent plea spilling from my lips, my heart pounding with the urgency of our situation. As David outlined the plan in more detail, a voice crackled through my mind, far away but achingly close. It was Claire's voice, soft and frightened, echoing the desperate urgency I felt now. The connection between us was growing stronger, an invisible tether forged by shared pain and love. Suddenly, the bell on the door rang again, sending icy fingers of dread crawling up my spine. I turned instinctively, everything falling into slow motion as a looming figure stepped inside. Silhouetted against the porch light, it was a man dressed in dark clothing, his face obscured by the brim of his cap, but the aura of danger radiated from him like heat rippling off pavement. David, he called, each syllable slicing through the air, filled with a chilling familiarity. We need to talk. David's expression shifted, the bravado immediately replaced by caution. Not here, he hissed, glancing back at us, his eyes shimmering with alarm. Get ready. Understanding surged through my veins. Whatever this man wanted from David, it was intertwined with our fate and perhaps with Claire's. I could feel the tension snapping as pools of fear and uncertainty spilled over into the air between us. The man took a step forward, and in that moment, I could swear I saw a flicker of recognition, something dark and menacing behind those hidden eyes, like a serpent poised to strike. My heart dropped, blood rushing in my ears as panic surged. Damn it, David, you shouldn't have come back. He shouted, and before I could react, chaos erupted as he lunged for David. The world twisted in a blur of movement, the diner morphing into a chaotic battleground, filled with shouts and the sound of breaking glass. All thoughts of Claire were drowned out by my instincts screaming to survive. I grabbed Annie and shoved her toward the exit. Go! We have to get out! I yelled, desperate for us to escape the impending storm, but just as we neared the door, I caught a glimpse of David falling to the ground, grappling with the intruder. Then, in a heart-stopping moment, I heard the words that would echo hauntingly through my mind for days to come. You should have left things alone, David. Claire's not the only one who needs saving. Those chilling words rang through the chaos, a stark reminder of the web we were entangled in, an unraveling knot of love, betrayal, and the painful truths that lay ahead. As the din of violence swirled around us, I realized we had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went, or who would be left standing when the dust finally settled. The din of chaos enveloped us, an oppressive spirit pressing down on my lungs. Instincts pushed me forward, while shock held me in place. David's grappling form on the diner floor was a mix of desperation and fear, and the intruder's words hung in the air, a siren call of dread that made my heart race. Each punch and kick echoed with the heavy weight of unspoken truths and dark secrets, and with every passing second, Claire felt farther away. Come on! I urged, yanking Annie's arm to pull her along. She stumbled into an exit, her wide eyes reflecting the panic I felt ripped through her. I turned back just as David wrestled his attacker into a corner booth, fingers slipping from my grip as the reality of our situation crashed down again. Mark's protective presence suddenly surged as he barreled through the chaotic scene, lunging to help David. Get out of here! He shouted over the chaos, the urgency in his voice laced with raw fear. I felt a split second of relief. Mark wasn't just a bystander, he was fighting for us, for Claire. Then, like a thief in the night, something took hold of me, a feeling I had buried deep within. Alongside the terror of losing Claire, anger surged through my veins, bubbling with emotion I hadn't allowed myself to feel until now. How many times had I brushed her safety aside, letting circumstances dictate my actions? Annie's fingers clutched at my sleeve. What do? We can't just leave them. Her voice shook slightly, but there was a fierce determination in her eyes I hadn't seen before. We can't stay here, I said, the words spilling out with an urgency that made her flinch. We need help. They'll need backup. You'll go. A stranger's voice broke through the tumult, cutting into our exchange. A wiry young man, who'd slipped into the diner seconds before the chaos began, stood near the entrance, his expression a mix of fear and resolve. He had shaggy hair and wide eyes, as if drawn into our plight by an unseen force. I can call the cops, then do it, I shouted, mindful of the escalating intensity at the booth. I wished I had a plan, wished I could find clarity amidst the swirling confusion, but there was no time. The frantic shout for assistance hung in the air like a prayer. The young man inched toward the door, hesitating just for a moment before bolting outside, practically praying the weight of our predicament wouldn't come crashing back down on him. The mere thought of leaving David and Mark behind felt treacherous, but Claire's face flickered through my mind, a reminder of my higher purpose in this dreadful scenario. If I didn't act, what chance would Claire have? Annie, I said, ripping my gaze from the chaos for just a moment to lock eyes with her. We need to find anyone else who can help. Maybe there's someone nearby who knows something. Just hold on. With a nod, her resolve rekindled, we dashed toward the diner's back door leading into the alley, a jarring contrast to the turmoil erupting within. The moment we reached the dimly lit passage, the world outside felt warped. The brief solace of the night air clashed sharply with the storming tempest within the diner. Where do we even start? I murmured, leaning against the cold brick wall, my breath quickening. Annie took a breath, her eyes drifting to the street where the headlights of cars cut through the night. We could check the pharmacy. It's close and sometimes they know the people who come around here. Just as I began to share her urgency, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed. We froze, our breaths hitching in our throats, but focused on the direction from which they approached. In mere seconds, a figure emerged from the shadows. A woman, face tense but determined, stepped into our line of sight. Hey! You too! Her voice called out, sharp yet silvery in the midst of the chaotic night. Are you friends of David? He needs help. My heart squeezed painfully at the sight of her, as recognition sparked. She was the waitress I'd seen earlier, hurriedly serving tables, consuming my curiosity. What are you doing here? I asked, barely keeping my voice steady. I can't explain. Right now. She pleaded, panic glimmering in her eyes, yet there was an unexpected sense of hope radiating from her. I've been waiting for the moment to confront him, for a long time. But if you care about Claire, we have to go back and help them. Desperation washed over me again, but something deeper stirred. The way she spoke suggested there was more lurking in the shadow, secrets waiting to be revealed, ties binding us all together in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. What do you know about Caleb? I asked cautiously, my heart racing as the weight of the night pressed into my chest. She shook her head, stepping closer as if the shadows could cloak us from any prying eyes. There's more at stake than you realize. Caleb isn't hiding just for himself. He's in deeper than you think, and his plans, they involve Claire, yes, but also something much larger. Every word dripped with urgency. The night suddenly felt like it was closing in, and as new questions and fears began to churn in my mind about Caleb, the warehouse, the connections that still lay hidden, I prepared myself for the unknown. We had to go back. Gather everyone, I said, with a flicker of certainty breaking through my tumultuous thoughts. And let's end this tonight. But before we could turn back, a sharp scream shattered the night, echoing through the diner, slicing through the stillness. It was Mark. It was as if the world had conspired to fracture our resolve one last time. I felt something deeper twist within me, and as we turned our backs on the dark alley, the shadows that seemed to cling to our souls whispered louder. The path ahead was rife with despair, yet illuminated with possibilities. I knew we were on the brink of uncovering something heart-wrenching and profound. Our quest for Claire was merely unfolding, but the truth held within this chaos had yet to be revealed. The screams echoed in my ears, piercing through the roaring chaos we had just escaped. Time felt suspended, each tick of the clock leading to an unfathomable dread that gnawed at the edges of my sanity. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as I turned to Annie and the waitress, whose name I still did not know. "What was that?" Annie's voice quivered, her panic igniting like dry kindling. "I don't know," I stammered, the reality of the diner crashing into my consciousness. "We have to move." The three of us rushed back toward the diner, the oppressive weight of uncertainty hanging over us like a storm cloud. The closer we drew, the clearer the sounds of chaos infiltrated my mind, yelling, something crashing to the floor, the unmistakable sound of wood splintering. My limbs felt heavier with each step, the fear of what we might find gnawing at my gut. As we burst through the door, the sight inside painted a vivid tableau of horror. The once familiar diner was transformed into a battlefield of overturned tables and chairs, food scattered across the linoleum floor like fallen leaves, and the air thick with the acrid scent of fear and adrenaline. My heart sank at the sight of David, cornered and battered, struggling against his assailant. Mark lay sprawled on the floor, his breath coming shallowly, each rise and fall of his chest a painful reminder that he was willing to sacrifice himself for us. "Get away from him!" I shouted, feeling a surge of rage at the sight of someone trying to take everything from us again. I moved forward instinctively, the shadows of doubt giving way to the flickering flame of protection ignited inside me. The waitress grabbed my arm, urgency sparkling in her eyes. "No! We need to be smart about this." But I couldn't heed her warning, every instinct screamed at me to act. I darted toward the chaos, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I needed to reach David, needed to rescue him before the darkness consumed him too. Annie followed close behind, her small frame pushing through the debris with surprising resilience. In that horrifying flash of chaos, I froze for just a heartbeat, a moment where time realigned and a realization struck deep. This wasn't just about Claire. It wasn't solely about rescuing those I loved. The connections we forged were more complicated than I had ever fathomed, wound intricately with Caleb's plans. I glimpsed the threads of a larger narrative weaved in with despair and hope, secrets that demanded to be brought into the light. The intruder caught sight of me, his eyes glaring with a mix of anger and surprise. "You shouldn't have come back." He spat, his lips curling into a snarl. "Let him go." My voice rang out like a battle cry, an echo of a resolve that had ignited within me. It was a call not only against the physical threat but the burdens I had worn too long without challenge. As I lunged forward, pulling David to his feet with all the strength left in my limbs, the waitress stepped in with surprising grace, maneuvering towards Mark, whose bruised form lay vulnerable. "Help me!" she cried out. I felt the heat of fear grip my chest as the intruder swung his fist. But with David's arm around my shoulder, we managed to dodge, our movements infused with desperation and the hope of survival. The waitress and Annie rushed to Mark's side, helping him up as the commotion inside the diner raged on. "Stop them!" the intruder yelled, fixing his glare on David. "This isn't just about you. You don't know the powers you're toying with." Confusion flickered in David's eyes, and for a sharp moment, I wondered what revelations clung to our tormentor. "What do you mean?" he shot back, his resolve wavering but still fiercely present. With his attention momentarily diverted, I seized the opportunity to scramble to the edge of the table, my heart racing as I grasped something heavy, a metal tray. I wielded it instinctively, positioning it as a shield, aware that the tide of confusion could turn on us at any moment, but just as I steadied my shaky breath and prepared myself for a fight, everything changed again. Flames danced in the corner of the diner, sending plumes of smoke swirling toward the ceiling, mingling with the cries and confusion. "What the hell?" I gasped, making sense of the chaos too late. Flames crawled their way up the walls, the inferno laughing at our struggle, as though the world around us conspired to tear us apart once and for all. "Out! Now!" I shouted, scrambling toward the exit. Panic surged through us as realization dawned we had to escape, but fleeing felt like a betrayal of everything I had come back to fight for. David grabbed my arm, pulling me back as I hesitated. "We can't leave. Claire, something is going on that we need to unravel." But even as he spoke, the heat intensified, catching our breaths in thick knots of fear. And then, through the cacophony, I spotted a figure silhouetted by the flames, a shadow that felt painfully familiar. "Caleb!" Standing there behind the chaos, a smirk etched on his face, revealing nothing but dark amusement. "Welcome to my world," he taunted, his voice laced with a sinister thrill as he stepped back into the growing chaos. My breath caught in my throat, the burden of dread collapsing around me like the flames eating through the diner. As everything spiraled out of control, I realized we stood at a precipice far more profound than I had imagined, a convergence of fate I couldn't anticipate or escape. Go. Go now. David shouted again, urgency tinging his voice with fear as he pushed me forward. But my heart and mind tangled hard, facing the certainty that while Claire's fate loomed ahead, the truth was entangled in flames, and Caleb's haunting reminder echoed in my wish for hope. In that moment, with a breathless exhalation, I realized we were losing our footing in the dark shadows, but something in me stirred, a whisper of clarity urging me to confront the fire that lay ahead. The heart of something larger pressed through the chaos, ready to reveal its secrets, cascading me into an uncharted journey I was both eager and terrified to divine. I stood at the threshold of the inferno, the dance of flames flickering like shattered hopes before my eyes. All the warmth and light I had ever felt with family and friends, everything that made life beautiful, was now choked beneath a heavy veil of smoke and fear. I barely registered David's frantic voice urging us to flee, my gaze locked onto the shifting silhouette of Caleb among the chaos. "Claire!" I cried out, the name escaping my lips as if it were a lifeline thrown into a storm, hoping against hope that she would answer. But the only response was the crackling of flames and the echo of my own heart pounding wildly in my chest. The walls seemed to close in, and I hesitated for a heartbeat, torn between the instinct to pull the ones I loved to safety and the desperation of a deeper calling. If Caleb was here, could it mean that Claire was close too? I refused to believe that I had come this far only to be driven back into the dark. Panic and resolve wrestled within me, a violent tug-of-war kicked off by an urgent thought: what if I didn't run? What if I stayed? Maybe when the world crumbled around us, facing it head-on was the only way to rebuild. "No!" I shouted against the din. "We have to find her. If there's a chance Claire's not worth this, whatever the hell you're thinking." David shouted back, yanking me near just as a large chunk of wood fell near us, splintering as it made contact with the ground. I felt a shiver race down my spine. "Courage is not about being fearless, David," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos. "It's about fighting for those we love in spite of the terror." I tore away from him, an unstoppable force fueled by longing and bravery. Annie and the waitress quickly fell in behind me, their eyes fierce shields reflecting the truth I clung to deep inside. Moving felt like threading through a dream twisted into nightmare. The air was saturated with the smell of burning wood and regret, but every step pushed me forward, closer to the heart of this chaos, closer to my heart, closer to Claire. We weaved through the debris, the fiery chaos illuminating our path with a hellish glow. "Where are you, Claire?" The words tumbled from my lips, a prayer and a plea, frantic and desperate. Suddenly, from the corridor we skirted, a cry pierced through the din, agonizing yet achingly familiar. "Help! Anyone!" I heard it clearly, electric. My heart swelled with hope. My instincts surged. It was Claire over there. I pointed toward the narrow path leading deeper into the diner, adrenaline electrifying my movements as I pressed forward. "This way." The others followed, instinctively trusting the flicker of determination glowing in my chest. In that moment, fear melded with resolve, giving me strength beyond comprehension. I surged forward, eyes burning from the smoke but unwilling to blink away the light shimmering near the end of the hallway. "Stay close," I yelled back to Annie and the waitress, my heart roaring in time with the urgency pooling in me. Just as we reached the last doorway, the air-shifted danger crackled ominously, thickening the tension with every breath. There, before me, a figure materialized through the smoke and fire, body shadowed in the dancing flames. "Claire!" I shouted, pushing past doubt, desperation. But it wasn't Claire, it was Caleb, his smirk twisted with malice, eyes glinting like shards of broken glass. "So, you've come to play," he taunted, cloaked in a confidence I couldn't fathom. "I'd hoped you'd have the sense to run. But since you're here, let's make this interesting. Let her go." I shouted, words sharper than shards of glass, each syllable laced with the cold steel of my resolve. "This is between you and me." In that moment, the diner ignited, flames licking higher. It felt as though the world itself was eager to swallow us whole. But Claire's frightened voice rattled through the echo of sweat and smoke, finding me through the madness. "Please. Help!" Caleb lunged forward, fists prominent, but I met him with everything I had within me. The adrenaline surged as our bodies collided, pain blossoming at the edges of my consciousness. I felt every bruise, every punch, but the thought of Claire propelled me onward. With each ferocious exchange, memories of laughter and shared dreams wove through my mind, grounding me even as chaos clamored to ruin our fragile connection. "I won't let you take her," I growled, grappling with him until I felt the sharp jolt of an elbow to my ribs, the air escaping me in a hard gasp. Suddenly, from behind, a burst of action caught me off guard. It was the waitress, her figure strategically leaping into the fray, reminding me that I wasn't alone. She caught Caleb off guard, her own voice ringing strong above the fire. "He doesn't own her." With renewed purpose, she grappled with him, her fists skillfully finding vulnerable spots. Each moment fueled our united front, shifting the tides of despair into something that felt like hope. I took the moment to spring back, my heart pounding as I scanned the smoky haze for Claire. "Claire! Where are you?" Amidst the chaos, I spotted her silhouette, standing trapped beneath the weight of the wreckage. "Right here!" she cried, and my breath caught. She was alive, but the darkness was closing in around her, like a vice tightening its grip, and I felt a surge of urgency that carried me toward her. "Hold on, Claire," I urged, moving forward, but Caleb's grip snapped around my arm suddenly, dragging me back. Desperation pulsed through every vein as I fought against him, my resolve unyielding. I wouldn't let him break me. Then, in a moment of divine clarity, I understood this wasn't just about me or her. It wasn't even about Caleb. It was about everyone tied to us, the communities held hostage by their shadows. "Let us go!" I shouted, my voice reverberating through the air like church bells. "Let her go. You think you're untouchable, but you're just a coward hiding in darkness." Caleb paused, a split second of surprise painting his features, and I grasped it. I surged through the anger I had buried and rose like smoke, thick, filled with undeniable weight. Within that second, while Caleb faltered, I dove into the chaos, buckling beneath the weight of what truly mattered. As I reached Claire, I pulled her from the wreckage in one desperate motion. "I've got you," I murmured, feeling like I'd stepped through fire and back again. "I won't let anyone take you." My heart was a tempest as we stumbled back into the flame-lit space, every shred of pain lifting us higher, fortifying our bond. But then Caleb regained his composure, and fury radiated from him like heat from the flames. "You think this is over? You have no idea what you've set in motion." And just as his body poised to strike again, the windows shattered. An echo of something larger had rippled through the air. The police arrived, bright lights illuminating the chaos, sirens piercing the night in powerful clarity. As officers burst inside, the once overwhelming world around me felt as though it had split, half shadow, half light. "Get down!" an officer commanded. I pulled Claire to the ground, securing our embrace as the chaos we had ignited around us began to unfold. Caleb's shouts turned into cries of desperation, drowned out by the echoing authority of newfound safety sweeping through the room. I held Claire close, her breathing heavy against my chest, and whispered, "We're okay. We're free." But in that moment, with the chaos finally quieting, I felt the weight of the journey we had traveled surge through my veins. The battles ahead wouldn't end tonight, they had only just begun, but, as the ghosts of tormented truth fell away in the wake of light, I held onto her tighter, and Claire, the girl who had seemed lost beneath a veil of shadows, turned her gaze to me, tears shimmering in her eyes that had been once haunted. "Thank you always," I breathed, and in that moment, as uncertainty haunted the darkness still lingering, I held onto the unwavering promise that together we would face it all, unearth the truth, and reclaim our light, one step at a time, and perhaps, deep within that tangled arc of chaos and redemption, we might find the true meaning of freedom, the strength found in connection, through love that endured against all odds and emerged unbroken. Because, ultimately, that was the only truth we needed to carry beyond the ashes, beyond fear, to a brighter dawn that awaited us all. In that, I found solace. The last embers flickered, and as I met Claire's gaze, the world was filled with infinite possibilities as long as we faced them together. "Always," I whispered, letting those words become our promise, woven into the foundation of the new life that awaited us.